Hineni, 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 Hineni. Shalom and welcome to Hineni, Conversations along an ancient way of becoming fully human. I'm Lisa Moria, founder of House of Divine Radiance, a sanctuary for embodied Gnōsis. Together we'll explore embodied Gnōsis through its Jewish apocalyptic, Gnostic Christian, and desert mystical expressions, woven together with sacred sound and transformative practice. These conversations are a blend of historically grounded inquiry, creative synthesis, and lived experience, offered not as final answers, but as invitations into deeper presence. Wherever you are today, thank you for being here. Hineni, here I am. Now let's begin. Hineni, Hineni. Welcome. I am delighted you've joined me for this inaugural episode of Hineni, a podcast from House of Divine Radiance. This podcast marks the end of a long creative sabbatical. Longtime friends of mine might know my work through the Temple of Divine Radiance, an experimental online space exploring the teaching and practice of goddess wisdom from the Hebrew Bible. But it's been on my heart for many years to open a house, which perhaps surprisingly is one of the oldest words across the ancient Near East for a temple. A house is also a place of rest and respite, a place of welcome, and a place that receives us exactly as we are, with whatever questions, sorrows, or joys we carry. It's my joy now to be refining the Temple of Divine Radiance into a House of Divine Radiance. And yes, this has been a 9-month project during my sabbatical. I hope this container will carry this work through the rest of my incarnation in this lifetime and beyond. One of the things I wrestled with over the past 9 months was a simple question. What is this path, really? What did studying, practicing, and embodying the often hidden or overlooked goddess wisdom of the Hebrew Bible actually teach me in simple terms? To answer that question, I had to go back about 10 years to the beginning of my own journey and re-encounter the figure who first called me on to my priestess path, and that is Maryam Magdalene. I have always seen her not so much as a Christian saint, a feminist icon, or a goddess emanation, but as a Jewish woman who loved a Jewish teacher of Gnōsis, inner wisdom, and who became the most accomplished adept of his teachings, both in the way of love and in the practice of mystical ascent. One day, as I sat at my altar deep in contemplation, I felt a message come through from her. This is an experience I've often had in my life. It's part of my own practice of Gnōsis. Whether these messages are truly from her, or wisdom from my higher self, or simply subconscious insights rising to the surface, it makes no difference to me. The result has always been transformative. But it had been literally years since anything like that had happened. For a long period of time while I was teaching in the temple, she was quiet. But this past April, clear instructions started to come through again. The first was that I was to radically simplify all the complicated declarations, mantras, soul vows, and other practices I'd accumulated over the years and return to the source of them all. And that source is a simple Hebrew word I knew well from one of the first recorded Ascent mystics in the Hebrew Bible, the prophet Isaiah. That word is Hineni. The moment I understood this message from Magdalene, which wasn't audible and it wasn't formed into words, but it arrived as a knowing in my body, I realized I'd been handed the master key to my own next unfolding and perhaps to the future of the House of Divine Radiance as well. Hineni means, here I am. Undone by a vision of the divine throne room, Isaiah hears the Holy One ask, "Whom shall I send and who will go for us?" And Isaiah answers with a simple cry, Hineni, send me. Hineni is a statement of radical undivided presence. More than that, it's a kind of surrender to reality that bows before a greater wisdom than its own. This one simple word ushers us into the eternal now, as I like to call the present moment, which is really the only moment that ever exists. It invites us simply to be here. Not in the past, not in the future, not in regret, not in doubt, not in overfunctioning, not in trying to control people or situations, not even in wondering what we'll eat for lunch. In the moment Maryam Magdalene redirected my attention to this one-word mantra, I knew I had answered my question, really, as to the future of the work. Everything that had come before in my path and my work was dissolving into this one simple invitation, one command, one mission that I believe can become the foundation of an extraordinary life. Hineni, here I am. I have made a sacred covenant with ultimate reality that I will fully show up for all that is within me and all that is asked of me right now, in the eternal now. Strangely enough, and this is something I've only begun discovering over the past few months, our joyful participation in the eternal now, exactly as it is, may be one of the master keys to the experience Yeshua prayed for on earth as it is in heaven. These days, it seems like everyone is looking for spiritual power. Whether a person seeks it through the orthodox religious practices of studying sacred text, repenting, doing good, participating in the life of a spiritual community, or through more arcane means, such as shamanic practice, mystery schools, or the study of magic, it seems like there are a million ways to define and find spiritual power. I was among this group for many years. I was raised evangelical Christian, later converted to a progressive Jewish denomination. In between, I explored all kinds of spiritualities. I wandered into communities where people said spiritual power came through knowledge or experience or through healing or through miracles. Now, on the other side of that journey, I think spiritual power is much simpler and more profound than any of these. And my own Gnōsis of spiritual power came to me through the Hebrew Bible and the received wisdom of both Jewish and Christian tradition. But the principle that Maryam Magdalene pointed me toward, Hineni, can be found in every major world religion and creed. I think the greatest spiritual power is undivided presence. That is the magic, mystery, and medicine of Hineni. Think about it. Every age has been full of distraction, but perhaps none has been filled with so many distractions, so easily accessible from the time we're very small, as our own age of screens and AI. If you're hungry, angry, bored, lonely, or searching, all you have to do is start swiping or scrolling. You'll find more information at your fingertips, no matter your age, location, educational level, or socioeconomic status, than any previous generation had access to. And yet, let me ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how whole do you feel inside on a daily basis? How harmonious are your personal and professional relationships? How at peace do you feel with the work you do to earn your daily bread? Perhaps even more revealing, how many times each day do you catch yourself at war with yourself over regrets or fears, or contemplating the path you wish you were taking, or wondering who or what you might lose if you became fully yourself? I believe the ancients had it right when they observed that the divisions within us are the real source of fragmentation, frustration, and alienation that we experience in everyday life. Yeshua put it this way in the Gospel of Thomas: if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. So often we hope our spiritual practices will bring us the peace we feel is missing in our lives, or show us how to resolve that inner dissonance. Perhaps what's really needed is not more outer knowledge, but more embodied Gnōsis, more truly actionable inner wisdom that can guide us as we heal the divisions within ourselves. Only then can we come to the eternal now moment, saying with all of our hearts, Hineni, here I am. Not some of me, not tatters, not pieces, not only the parts I want to be seen, not the grief over the parts of myself I've abandoned, not the fears, not the worries, not the neuroses, not the overfunctioning, just me. The beautiful soul that will continue to exist long after the body and all its concerns are gone. Cultivating undivided presence sounds like a beautiful practice, and perhaps we can imagine that the results are amazing, but what does this really lead to? Who are we when we show up saying Hineni, attached to nothing but the reality of this moment? For that, we have to go back to Maryam Magdalene, but not to her appearances in the Gospels or her speaking role at the resurrection tomb. Rather, we need to fast forward a few centuries to Egypt, where Gnostic Christian groups were writing and reading texts that bore her name. Some may have also come from Syria, there's debate about that, and which contain teachings believed to have been preserved through her apostolic authority. That little trip through time brings us to the powerful text called the Gospel of Mary. Though the text never explicitly identifies Mary as Maryam Magdalene, there are details within it that when you read them alongside the other Gnostic Gospels from this era have led many scholars to conclude that the speaker is indeed Maryam Magdalene, rather than Maryam the Virgin, Yeshua's mother, Maryam of Bethany, or any other Maryam among his followers. And for those who will note the use of my word Gnostic, yes, I'm referring to the heterodox Gospels or those that did not make it into the canonical scriptures. As Gnostic, I do understand that term is problematic and that it is not fully accepted by scholars. At the same time, there is really no other generally accepted alternative name, so I use it with qualifications. Now, regarding this particular Gnostic Gospel, the Gospel of Mary, the surviving manuscript dates to the 4th or 5th century CE, but many scholars believe the text itself, the actual content, may date to the 2nd century, so the 100s, just a few generations after Yeshua's death. In it, we have our most complete portrayal of Maryam Magdalene as an Ascent mystic, very similar to the Isaiah I mentioned earlier, one who describes the soul passing through the powers of the higher realm on its journey to freedom or toward a visitation in the divine realms. We might understand this destination as Malkut Hashemayim, the kingdom of heaven, although this exact name for the heavenly realm is not used in the Gospel of Mary text itself. The ascent narrated here by Maryam shares striking similarities with mystical ascent narratives in the Hebrew Bible and with the later Hekkelot and Merkabah literature of the early rabbinic era. Maryam's description of the soul's journey, or perhaps Yeshua's own journey after his death, as some have suggested, is not met with enthusiasm by her fellow male disciples. They are full of fear, including fear they might be killed, just as Yeshua was. In the climactic moment of the narrative, Maryam moves from narrating her vision to encouraging her fellow disciples, culminating with this stunning phrase, "Don't weep or grieve or let your hearts be divided. Rather, we should praise the teacher's greatness because he's prepared us and made us Rome," it says in Coptic, fully human. That little word Rome or Roma is a Coptic term that means human being, but one that can carry the sense here of a complete or fully human person. It's an idea we encounter in several other Gnostic Gospels. In later episodes, we'll explore more where it appears, but I believe the roots of this idea reach back into Jewish apocalyptic texts of the last few centuries BCE. This is my personal interpretation, where certain groups anticipated the return of Enoch, an antediluvian sage who was taken to heaven without undergoing ordinary human death. In some of those texts, Enoch becomes associated with a figure called the Son of Man, a title connected with an expected heavenly savior figure, and one that Yeshua repeatedly uses in the Gospels. He uses the same name for himself, and it's used for him by others. Scholars of traditional Christianity have debated for centuries exactly what this mysterious title means, but a more literal rendering might be the child of the human, or even more for our purposes, the child of the fully human. In some Gnostic texts, this movement towards spiritual wholeness is described as becoming male, because masculine language was sometimes used, for better or worse, to represent completeness or undivided being. You see, among some early Christian groups whom we now call Gnostic, those that were later suppressed or eventually persecuted out of existence, there was a teaching that the Holy One, God himself, is the ultimate pattern or template of humanity, and this divine human had a child who could reveal to those on earth what it means to become complete, whole, and undivided. In my reading of the Gospel of Mary, Maryam Magdalene is reminding her fellow disciples that they have indeed met Yeshua as the child of the human. That's how they understood him, a teacher who showed them a comprehensive template for undivided living. In the Gospels of Philip and Thomas, other Gnostic Gospels also found in Egypt, there is a great deal of emphasis in Yeshua's teachings on unifying opposites within oneself and within the world. This inner unification becomes part of the path toward the kingdom of heaven into one's life on earth. Perhaps then, we could say that the goal of cultivating Hineni, or of showing up fully with our whole selves to every eternal now moment, that goal is ultimately to become fully human, to become a person who is increasingly capable of meeting reality without rejection, resistance, or inner division. Isn't that what the disciples were doing? Naturally, in their human selves, they were meeting the moment with fear, anxiety, and projection of doom. And Mary comes in and says, don't let your heart be divided. Let's bring this idea into modern life. What would your daily reality be like if you no longer had to resist what you don't want or reject those ideas that are different from yours? What would it be like if you didn't feel torn between opposing belief systems or secretly wonder whether the price of becoming fully yourself would be losing the love and acceptance of those you cherish? Hineni, here am I, is, in my experience, the path toward becoming fully human, a whole and undivided being. This is not accomplished overnight, and it probably isn't accomplished in a single lifetime. But day by day, each choice to return to the eternal now, whenever we feel pulled away, helps us to heal those divisions within and gradually experience that completeness or fullness for ourselves. Isn't that what we're actually looking for? Now, at this point, you might be saying, okay, this all sounds good, but you said this was a podcast about embodied Gnōsis. How do I weave this into my real, lived, messy, beautiful day-to-day life? Well, I'm glad you asked, because historical inquiry and creative synthesis are only two of the three parts of our approach to Hineni. The third part is lived practice, and in my experience, it can be discouraging to begin by trying to be present every single moment of the day, especially if our lives have been full of distraction. As any spiritual practitioner knows, the minute you resolve to become more present, more distractions inevitably arise. So what if we can think in nanoseconds of Hineni, or seconds, or at the most a minute or two? If we can retrain our bodies to come into the eternal now exactly as we are, even for short periods of time, then over the course of our unfolding practice, we can begin to experience greater and greater presence as a way of life. While many traditions emphasize meditation as a means of cultivating presence, I find that meditation can be difficult for many people. In the Western world, the idea of meditation has also become closely associated with the yogic and Buddhist traditions. Neither tradition owns meditation, and neither ever has. In fact, all three Abrahamic traditions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which tend to form the inherited spiritual background of many people in the West, have powerful meditative practices of their own. It's just that the meditation often looks different. Rather than imagining meditation as silent seated practice or a walking meditation, we find musical and vocal forms of meditation: liturgy, sacred text recitation, chant, and hymnody. Sound has a powerful way of focusing our attention. If you are fully present with the sound of this moment, you cannot be anywhere else. If you would like to use your own voice to anchor yourself in the present moment, I encourage you to download the complimentary guide offered on the homepage of houseofdivineradiance.com. It's called Hineni. And at the end of that guide, I invite you to learn and practice a vocal meditation on this powerful word. Over time, the meditation can become a kind of vibrational cue that helps your body return to the present whenever you feel divided, confused, or fragmented. In this podcast, we're going to use an auditory cue. I'll play a series of notes on the Turkish ney, which is a cane reed flute, and it's often heard in Sufi music, including music associated with the Mevlevis, the order that grew out of the teachings of Jalaluddin Rumi. Cane flutes, actually, though, they reach far back into early Mesopotamia and also appear in the Hebrew Bible and throughout the early Jewish and Christian worlds. So I invite you, if you aren't already, to move somewhere that's free of distraction. Settle into a comfortable seated or reclining position and allow your breath to deepen as much as feels natural, which will help your nervous system settle. Then listen to the next 3 minutes of flute sounds. Let the sound wash over your being, gathering your whole attention into this eternal moment and nowhere else. If it helps, you can chant Hineni silently as you listen, following the rise, crest, and fall of each breath. Thank you for joining me for this inaugural edition of Hineni, a podcast from House of Divine Radiance. As we close today, I invite you to carry 2 simple questions into your own embodied Gnōsis. Where in your life do you feel most divided? And more than that, what would it mean not to solve everything, but simply to say, Hineni? These 2 questions are ideal for contemplation or journaling. You might sing about them, dance them to your favorite music, or let them roll through your being on a long walk in nature. If the path of Hineni has taught me anything, it's this. Whether your answer comes through a visitation from Maryam Magdalene, through your own inner thought stream, through the well-timed words of a friend, or even a random road sign, know that the answer will come. Your only responsibility is to cultivate enough attentive awareness to notice when it does. Hineni, Hineni. Thank you for walking this part of the way with me. If something in today's conversation stirred your heart, don't rush away from it. Sit with it, sing with it, carry it into your body, your relationships, and your ordinary days. For more information or to join me for an upcoming immersion, visit houseofdivineradiance.com or explore the written transmissions at magdalenemerkaba.substack.com. Until next time, Hineni, here I am. Hineni, Hineni.